apologize for the delay, but we're about to get started. A couple of things real quick. If you wish to speak this morning on the consent agenda items, we're going to want you to fill out one of these forms and get it to Dominique here, the clerk, so we know who desires to speak. We're also going to change it up a little bit this morning, and after the consent agenda, we will take a short recess for the opportunity to have pictures taken for those who are receiving awards today. So with that said, I will now move that we open the meeting of Tuesday, February 27, 2024 of the Board of County Commissioners in Seminole County. It is now approximately 9:45 a.m. We are going to ask Ms. Bonnie Hall from Central Florida Free Thought Community to lead us in prayer, and then Deputy County Attorney Paul Chipok will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Thank you, Chairman Zembauer, Commissioners, and City staff. As a proud Seminole County resident and mother to an enthusiastic elementary student, I stand before you today with a heart full of optimism and hope for the future of our county and the generations to come. In our deliberations today, may we embrace this moment of civic engagement with open hearts and minds. I'm reminded of the words of Helen Keller, who said, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much." Our community is a tapestry of diverse voices, each contributing to the vibrant mosaic that is Seminole County. Let us embrace the strength that lies in our diversity and work collaboratively to address the challenges and celebrate the successes that shape our shared experience. In this commission meeting, may our discussions be guided by a genuine desire to create positive change, ensuring a brighter tomorrow for our children and generations to come. May we approach the challenges before us with wisdom, guided by a vision that transcends individual perspectives for the greater good of our beloved community. Let our actions today lay a strong foundation for a brighter tomorrow, where unity triumphs over division, where progress knows no bounds, and where we all maintain a shared commitment to harmony and the flourishing of all who live, work, play, or visit Seminole County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chipok?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. Now we're going to go to our awards and presentations and proclamations. Proclamation proclaiming Sergeant Donald L. Smith, United States Air Force, as Seminole County's February Veteran of the Month. This will be read by Commissioner Constantine. Commissioner?
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I am honored to move the proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing United States Air Force Sergeant Donald L. Smith for his outstanding service to the United States in Seminole County. Whereas the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Space Force demonstrate a resolute spirit and unmatched selflessness, reminding us that there are few things more American than giving of ourselves to make a difference in the lives of others. And whereas throughout the country's history, generations of service members have answered the call to leave their families, their jobs, and put their futures and even their lives on the line to valiantly defend our nation. And whereas for many service members, the sacrifices ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedoms and the promise of liberty. And whereas there are more than 30,000 living veterans in Seminole County who served our nation in times of peace and war, through their service, they kept America strong. And whereas Sergeant Donald L. Smith, enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1976 and served honorably until he was discharged in 1980. His military assignments include working on the F-111A and the F-4C aircraft at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, for the 474th Fighter Wing and the 429th Fighter Squadron. He also was assigned solo temporary duty at the 12th Tactical Air Command in MacDill Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida. And whereas Sergeant Donald L. Smith worked for Grumman Aerospace in New York for 12 years after discharge, working on the same F-111 that he maintained at Nellis Air Force Base. He retrofitted the aircraft to EF-111A and worked on the F-14 and the A-6. He was also a volunteer firefighter for the Eastport Fire Department in New York for 15 years and rose to the rank of captain, and in 1987 was selected as the Fireman of the Year. And whereas Donald L. Smith then drove tractor trailers for 30 years covering 48 states, hired by Commercial Driver Training as an instructor in West Babylon, New York, he taught veterans and civilians. Sergeant Donald L. Smith took second place in the Arizona Trucking Association Rodeo in 2010. Over the last 30 years, he had 3 million miles of safe driving record. And whereas Sergeant Donald L. Smith moved to Seminole County in 2021 upon retiring from the tractor trailer driving, he became a member of the American Legion Post 53 in Sanford, Florida, and accepted the position as first vice commander of the post, and then was elected as the post commander in June 2022. His efforts have been instrumental in relocating the post and revitalizing community efforts through the American Legion Project Vet Relief. And whereas Sergeant Donald L. Smith has brought great credit and distinction upon himself, the United States of America, the United States Air Force, and Seminole County, now therefore be it proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our gratitude, admiration, and respect for Sergeant Donald L. Smith for his outstanding service to the United States Air Force and the residents of Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation is presented to Sergeant Donald L. Smith, along with our sincere congratulations and recognition as Seminole County's Veteran of the Month.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, passes unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Smith. Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, if you'd like to say a few words, please come to the podium, and we'll allow you as much time as needed.
I don't know who put me in for this, but it's quite nice. I feel there's a lot of other veterans that are more deserving of this than myself for the short time I've been here in Seminole County. As you did hear, that we did close the other post on Sanford Avenue. We have the new post at 2544 Park Drive, right up the road from Dairy Queen. Everybody knows that it is. That's a landmark. We say that only because a lot of people don't know Park Drive very much, and there are a few businesses over there. We do have coffee and chat every Friday between the hours of 9 and 12. It's open to all veterans and the public. Just this past Friday, we had 3 homeless people that came in. And it's something that we extend out to everybody. We are not just concerned about the veterans, we're concerned about the community. We're concerned about the children. We teach Americanism, which is very big and almost forgotten about in today's day. How many times you go to our schools now and you see children stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance? How many times you see them take time to have a prayer time? very rare. So these are things I stand for. I welcome any veteran to come over and visit our post, as well as our sister post Oviedo, because Oviedo was part of Sanford at one time. But Post 53 is trying to grow to what we were once before. And I thank you for everything you've done. I thank my wife for standing and supporting me through my years. So with great honor, I accept this.
Thank you, Sergeant, very much. If the board would join us on the floor for a picture with the sergeant and his family.
Perfect. On my count, in 3, 2, 1.
Can I just get one more? Sure. Can I get my veterans from my post in my Oviedo area to come up? And,
All the veterans going down to one of the ends.
All right. Everybody right here, see me? All right. Everybody on my count in 3, 2, 1. We're gonna have one more right here. Okay, smile.
Sure, if you want.
Yeah.
One more.
Everybody move on this side, so it's balanced.
It'll be balanced now, I assure you of that.
Easy now, how do you know that?
All right, everybody on my count in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, sir.
Good morning.
Okay, we're going to take a moment with County Manager, Mr. Darren Gray, who's going to take a moment and introduce some new employees here at the county. Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and it's my pleasure to introduce a few of new additions to our management team. So if you would, when I call your name, just stand and remain standing. We'll start with Adam Leith. He's our new Animal Services Division Manager. We have Steve Kuntz. He is our new Purchasing and Contracts Division Manager. Welcome, Steve. We have Mandy Salazar, our Parks and Recreation Division Manager. And you all know this guy, Owen Reagan. He is our new Roads and Stormwater Division Manager. Served in that role temporarily on many occasions, I hear. Deputy Fire Chief Matthew Hetler over administration in our fire department. And Dale Hall, our new Planning and Development Division Manager. So welcome each of you.
Well, welcome all of you, and thank you very much. And the reason we brought you in to do this early, because we want you to not have any delay in getting your work started today. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, next up is going to be our County Investment Advisor report from Mr. Scott McIntyre. Mr. McIntyre, are you good to go?
I'm good to go.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, sir.
Okay, let's see. Maybe I'm a little behind today, so I won't make it any worse. So the major economic themes, the Fed did remove its tightening bias. They told us that they don't expect to raise rates again. That doesn't mean they're going to start cutting rates. He also sort of threw in the idea that they're going to be more patient. So the market is now not expecting, for a lot of reasons, including what the Fed said, but the market is not expecting that the Fed is going to cut in March. It's not even clear they're going to cut in May, maybe as late as June. But of course, things change with every piece of economic data, and the reason right now that the market has adjusted itself and yields are a little bit higher is because we got consumer inflation that was warmer than expected during the month of January. Everybody kind of looked at that number, and that may just wind up being an aberration. It might be an outlier, but for right now, the market's expecting that inflation is not as under control as it was. But at the same time, consumer spending slowed significantly in January as we moved from the holiday buying period to sort of hibernating a little bit. And then at the same time, all three major stock indexes reached record highs. It might have happened again today. A lot of that is driven by NVIDIA and 7 major stocks, but the rest of the market is on board with this. And consumer confidence is improving, and at this point, it looks like the economy in the first quarter is going to be a little bit stronger than people thought it would be, kind of like the fourth quarter being stronger than we thought it would be, and the third quarter being stronger. So we'll see. It's early on. This is the CPI. This is the what I was telling you about, and it's kind of hard to see, but that red line there is core CPI, which excludes food and energy prices, and it's kind of been flat. It moved up a little bit higher. It's nothing to be alarmed about, but that downward trend seems to not be as sharp anymore. It's flattened out a little bit. If you look at the breakdown of inflation, that blue line is the service sector. That's making the major contribution. And within the service sector, shelter costs. So it's rents. And anecdotally, we know from Zillow data and Realtor.com data that rents are actually moving down. They're just lagging. So we believe, and I think a lot of people believe, that inflation will continue to move downward pretty sharply, actually, over the next 6 months. But for right now, we're looking at this little blip, and that blip kind of presents an opportunity, continue to step out and put longer securities on so that we're protected. Income is somewhat protected in 2024 and 2025, and hopefully somewhat into 2026 as well. This is retail sales. Just very briefly, when I talk about consumers slowing down their spending, it was pretty dramatic in January. It was actually down 0.8, and it was expected to be flat, so a pretty big move. So looking at current investment choices, you can see the treasuries, and just kind of a reminder that I leave the last 3 meetings as scratch out, so you can see where we were. Yields are higher than they were the last time I presented to you, but they're well below their highs back in October. And so upcoming maturities. Still have one coming up here in February at a fairly low yield. There's a couple in March, there's one in April. Again, some of those lower yields are coming off and being replaced with higher yields. Recent investments, as you can see, we tried to, and have been trying for a while, to push the portfolio out, to push duration out, to take advantage of the higher yields. My recommendations, and I don't need a motion right away because I'm going to go to one more slide, but the recommendations are that we take $10 million and go out in floor palm term a year, because relative to other investments in that area, that's really, really good. And then with another $20 million, go out to June of 2026 and October of 2026. Those are periods where typically you need money. There are also holes in the portfolio that we want to fill. There are also spots that are relatively inexpensive. They're cheap areas. So again, this is another attempt for us to move that portfolio out. And I want to show you, first off, the portfolio in January is 315 days. It had an average yield of 470. 85% of that was fixed. 15% was liquid. That's a fairly low liquid percentage. As we make the moves that I've suggested at the end of this month, slightly higher yield, slightly longer average days for what it's worth of duration. And then really what I want to focus on is this last slide here, the average portfolio maturity by year, going back to February 2021, 22, and 23. In February 2021, it was only 131 days average. that allowed us in that super low yield environment to hopefully not lock in at super low yields. As we moved into 2022, 215 days, starting to see slightly higher market opportunities, but we're not pushing out yet. This time last year, we were at 295 days, and this time this year we'll be at 330 days. So this is an effort, as yields were higher, to push the portfolio out so that when you roll into the next year, you're going to have, hopefully, solid earnings. So I didn't mean to talk as much, but going back here, I guess I need...
Great, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, motion to implement recommendations of our financial advisor based on the report submitted today and recommend the clerk implement said board recommendations.
Second.
Motion by Delary, second by her. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, carries unanimous.
Thank you.
I didn't ask if anybody had any questions. Did anybody?
We would have asked them.
No, we're not done.
I figured as much. Okay, it was good to see everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great.
All right, we're going to next move to the consent agenda. I want to remind everybody in the audience, if you desire to speak on a consent item agenda, you need to fill out one of these cards in the lobby right away. You need to put the number of the item you desire to speak about in the item number place and hand it to the clerk, Dominique, right here at the front. Okay, I will now go to the county attorney, Ms. Kate Latore, who will read the rules for public speaking.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Florida law provides that members of the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard on propositions before the Board of County Commissioners, except when the board is acting on emergency or ministerial matters or conducting a meeting exempt from the requirements of the Sunshine Law. Individuals shall be permitted 3 minutes each for public comment or 6 minutes when the individual is an official representative of a formal association or group. The chairman may modify the maximum time for public comment at his sole discretion when appropriate. Public comments on quasi-judicial or other public hearing items will occur during the board's consideration of those items this afternoon. Public comments on pending procurement matters or on non-agenda items shall not be permitted at this time. Members of the public desiring to make public comment should fill out a speaker form and present the form to staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Torrey. So, County Manager, do we have any revisions to the consent agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Just one item on the consent agenda that I'd like to pull, and that's item number 17.
Number 17.
That's all I have.
Commissioners, any questions for the county manager on number 17 that's desired to be pulled? Okay, so 17 is pulled.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull number 28 for discussion.
Commissioner Delary would like to pull number 28. Any
Mr.
other
Chairman,
commissioners?
I would like to pull 18 for a quick question.
Constantine wants to pull number 18. Commissioner Hurd, do you want to be the lonely one that doesn't want to pull anything? I have none that I desire to pull. Okay. All right, let's go to public input. Dominique, who is the first speaker and what item?
I do not have any yet, but I do see a couple in the audience might be filling out a form.
Okay, let's try to get that wrapped up. In the meantime, please silence your cell phones, any electronic devices you may have. First person that gets completed, just come on up, give that to the clerk, and we'll bring you right to the microphone.
Mr. Chairman, while we're
Commissioner.
doing that, the quick question I had on 18 had nothing to do with the substance of it, but I am a board member of Career Source. I don't believe that would qualify as any conflict. I just wanted to make sure before I voted on it.
I don't believe so. That's an uncompensated position, correct?
Correct.
Then you're fine.
Mr. Chairman, then I will...
Only
withdraw.
inquiry?
I take off, put back 18.
We'll say roll 18 back in, okay. 18's back in.
And while we're doing that, Mr. Chairman, I just have a comment for the item number 28 that I'm referring for.
Commissioner
And
Delary.
again, I fully support the item. I just want to make sure that since we're applying for a grant, in the grant documents, we've had issues in the past with lawsuits. I just want to make sure that in the grant document, that if we're brought into a lawsuit, that any and all partners that funded the pilot program is involved in it, so that we're not left alone.
County Attorney, any comments? I think that was an inquiry for you.
Well, I could keep that in mind going forward. This is just approval of
again,
the
that's-
grant
I'm just-
application,
I'm
and
just
so...
making a comment for when it comes back to us.
Absolutely, and Commissioner and I did discuss this, and we'll watch when this comes back in the form of a grant agreement that his concerns are addressed.
Yeah, it sounds like to me that should be wrapped up in a contractual
care of.
agreement, not necessarily approval.
And that's the only reason why I'm bringing it up.
Fair enough.
Brought back to us and it's addressed.
Okay. Can 28 go back in?
28, go back in.
Any other questions on 28?
I don't.
Seeing none, we're back to a full house minus 17. Okay.
And we're getting close while we're waiting. We're almost there, I can tell with anticipation. I'd just like to thank everyone for waiting. I had car trouble this morning after I was out on the road and managed to get here in one piece, but my heart was beating a little faster than it usually
It's
does.
all good.
No problem.
It just shows we're normal folks, too. If your first speaker just wants to come on up before you get it filled out, we're gonna move things along here.
Few minutes that we have to wait is always, we should always be concerned about others getting here. That's fine.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to express my concern.
Absolutely, sure.
Same.
Okay, call the first name and let's have them line up. If there's three speakers, all three of you will just line up behind each other.
Mr. Mark Britton and then Evelyn Britton.
On which item?
Item number,
233000007.
I'm sorry?
I believe this is a development services number.
What's the number? 20 what?
2330007.
233. No, I don't think that's a number we're using for an agenda item.
Do we know the agenda item?
That's what we're trying to get to. Sir, what is it?
Yeah.
What is it here that you're here to speak about? Just tell us.
This is about the public nuisance at 4280 Tangerine Avenue.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
item number
Item 13.
13.
Yep.
Okay, Dominic, if you would just pencil in item 13, please, so we have that for the record. And folks, you each have 3 minutes. State your full name and your address, and then you can begin. Pull the microphone over close to you if you could.
My name is Mark Britton. I live at 4261 Tangerine Avenue, Sanford, Florida, 32773. Been there my entire life. The house across the street is at 4280 Tangerine Avenue. It was where my mom grew up. Its property's been in the family for better than 100 years. I know it's a wreck. I personally was going to demo the house, and I was under the understanding that my mom still had attachment to it. That's the reason I hadn't done it yet. But now that I have spoken with her again, she informed me that she does not have attachment to it anymore. So my intentions is to demo the home and put a tiny home over there for her to be there as she wants. And that's what I was plans to do. I've already made arrangements to remove all the stuff and demo the home.
Okay. Anything else?
If I wanted to get rid of the place, I could have sold it several times already.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Several, people's made offers and wanted to buy and whatever.
Sure.
I don't want to lose the property.
Sure.
And I will do whatever it takes to not lose the property.
Okay. Okay, very good. If you'll just stand by for a few moments. Next speaker, is it on the same item?
Yes, sir, and that is Evelyn Britton.
Your full name and address for the record, ma'am?
Evelyn Britton, and I live at 4261 Tangerine Avenue.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Go ahead and proceed.
Tell them what you want to say.
Well, I've been there all my life, and there's been a lot of changes over the years, and it's, where I live right now, we've been there for 68 years. My husband and I built there, and I've been widowed almost 12 years, and sometimes it's not easy to keep things going, but I do the best I can, and my mother wanted us to have this property, and she deeded it to me many, many years ago. So it's personal. I walk around a lot and look and remember, and, our family lived there forever. My dad lived there before he passed away in 1953. He had cancer, and, that's something, and they live there, and it's just attached, It's
Sure.
something that and I do what I can physically, because I am restricted,
Sure.
and, but I'm doing whatever I can to make things better
Okay,
every day,
great.
but I'm limited at times, so.
Understood. Well, thank you very much. Next person,
And the final speaker is Charles Mullins on the same subject.
Mr. Mullins?
Hello, my name is Charles Mullins, and I was born within a few miles of this property, and I've lived there all my life. So I'm in here to support my neighbors, and I realize the property needs to be cleaned up, but I also realize these people are very poor, and they might need help to clean this property up. And when you're struggling to buy food and feed your family, then other things aren't quite so important. So I'm just here to find out what's going on with our county and to figure out what we can do about helping these people. Thanks.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mullins. Anyone else on this item?
No, sir.
I do have some inquiries. Folks, whichever one feels more comfortable speaking, is this your first interaction with the county on any action on this property?
Kind of, sort of. We've had some code enforcement issues,
Okay.
Which is, understandable. But I've never had any issue as far as anything else, and
maybe my more pointed question is, this has been an ongoing issue that code enforcement has visited and been there, so it's not like this is, like you're just first hearing about it being a concern for your neighbors in the
Right.
county.
Well, there was several times that there was issues that, wasn't my doings. Like I removed last week 2 or 3 vehicles. They didn't belong to me. They weren't mine. One of them was my neighbor's. And I've done. I told them I had enough. That's it. I took their junk to the scrapyard.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And as far as, there's been an accusation of people living in ain't nobody living in the house.
Okay.
Yeah, nobody living in the house.
Great.
And I'm not going to argue the fact that it looks like crap. I'm not going to argue
Sure.
that, but you understand why I haven't tore it down yet.
Understood. Okay.
But I have arrangements to make it a nice, pretty, clean lot.
Understood. Well, thank you very much. If you all just make yourself back to your seats, we appreciate your input today. Anyone else to speak on this matter?
No, sir.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Herr. This is her district. Commissioner?
Well, first I'd like to start by acknowledging that it looks like we're all in agreement and that this property has been under code enforcement board review for a very long time, judging by the number of fines that have accumulated. I would like to take a minute and turn to the county attorney and ask for you to very clearly explain to the citizens what is happening today, because there was an insinuation that we're attempting to take the property, and that is not accurate. So let's clarify that.
So today is a determination that the property is or is not a public nuisance. Based on the condition of the structures on the property, the building official has made a finding that they're unsafe, and then that determination will be confirmed or not confirmed by the board today. Following today's hearing, if they were to find the property as a public nuisance, it will be noticed for an additional hearing, which, according to the staff report, will be, I believe, April 23rd, which is a public hearing, which at that time, the board will decide whether to require that the property be demolished or remedied, put back into a position or into a condition where it can be lived in, and you would be given presumably a certain amount of time to make that happen, either demolish or rehabilitate the structure. And if you are not able to do that within the time period provided, then the board can authorize the county to take that action on your behalf, and then the costs will be assessed as a lien against the property if the county has to take that action.
So I appreciate that explanation. So the word here today is that I think we're all in agreement that the property is not only unattractive, but it is actually probably dangerous. So it is our responsibility to give you due process, which is what we're doing today, to notify you that it's officially notify you that it's a nuisance, and to ask that you rehabilitate or do whatever. And it sounds like you're in agreement.
Yes.
Between now and the 23rd, let's get the work done, and then on the 23rd, on the 23rd, it's a hearing, and we continue through the process. So with that, I would yield back to the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, folks, very much, and I would encourage you to work with the folks you've been working with at the county and communicate continuously with them through this process, and we'll get there.
Thank you.
So thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Dominique, any other requests to speak on any of the agenda items?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll close the public input portion of the hearing. I'll go to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I will move the approval of the consent agenda, first 3, the constitutional officers, through 31, and excluding item 17.
Second. Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. We're going to take about a 10-minute break, get a photo opportunity for our proclamation awards today, so you're welcome to stay in the chambers for 10 minutes or take a break, but those that would like to get a picture and receive their proclamations, come on down. restart it here?
Sounds like a winner.
Commissioners ready?
Yep.
All right, folks, we're going to now move on to our park system master plan for Deer Run Master Plan. Mr. Rick Durr, take it away, sir.
Good morning. For the record, Rick Durr, what am I? I'm the Parks and Recreation Department Director, and I'm very pleased to be here with you this morning. I'm going to take the first part of this, which will be the Park System Master Plan overview. As you'll see, there have been lots of input from staff, consultants, folks throughout the community that had participation in this particular exercise, and I'd like to acknowledge their contributions right up front. I mean, this isn't done by any one singular person. This is done by a team of folks, both within the county and reaching out to folks who live here in the county for their input as well. So just keeping that in mind. I'm going to try to keep things moving pretty quickly, try to stay at a high level. The book itself is this document, and as I'd like to point out as we get into this, while it is prescriptive, meaning that it is a look ahead for the next 10 years, it is also not set in stone. This allows us to then work with this document moving forward as we go through budget every year, and it allows us and puts certain checks and balances in place so that we're making sure that we're re-examining certain ideas throughout every year as we prepare our budget, such as have our needs changed, have our priorities changed, and so forth. So with that being said, just a really quick overview. We're going to talk about this in three main segments, looking at existing and future needs going forward, certain master plan initiatives, which we'll spend a little bit of time on, and then the last piece, which is how do we implement this going forward as a guide to allow us to move ahead. This process started in March of last year. I'll have to apologize at the very end. I realized this morning that originally this was planned to be before you on January the 23rd, and obviously we needed to move that back another month for personal reasons. But this generally is how the project laid out. We had a lot of staff and consultant work at the front end, spent last summer and into the fall really meeting with the community and getting their feedback, and then spending the rest of that time taking all that information and then pretty much trying to coalesce that into the final document and the presentation that you see here. It worked within our existing system of how we reorganized throughout the course of last year. And on the right-hand side, the lower right-hand side of the list, as you've seen, we've had a number of master plans updates that have come before you starting in 2021. The good news is that this is the last one for some time, so we've been able to check these off the list. And while they are very important to do so, we want to make sure that we've got a good foundation going forward, and to do so, it really takes an understanding of where we are and where we've come from. So with that being in mind, this is not a hit the reset button every time we do a master plan of this type where we're looking at the entire system. We went back to 10 years and looked at our 10-year master plan from 2013. We had an update that we had done in-house in 2018, and then everything else that touches a master plan as we continue to look at existing conditions throughout the county, including what's the very latest population and demographics data moving forward. We're able to use that information off the Seminole 2045 project. So we were able to tie in to a lot of other existing projects as they move forward to help inform this one as it played out. Now, needs assessment isn't just simply you walk in the door, you ask people a list of things, and then you say, okay, here's what everybody wants. There's a lot of different aspects that go into a needs assessment, some of which is internal, and that's taking a good hard look at the way you do business and internally, and then turning that around and getting public input. So three main groups of needs assessment that came out of this process, and I'll start with the first one, and that's really doing an in-depth planning review. Now, with all of these things in mind, we had established, and this goes back probably back to 2009, and we've modified it through the years, is making sure that right out of the gate, we're doing these things in compliance or at least in agreement with our overall department mission of enriching lives through outstanding cultural, educational, environmental, and recreational experience. And throughout those, we have our different goals and objectives. And if you like to call them maybe something different, these are maybe our 5 main pillars, if you will. And while I'm not going to read those up on the screen, these have been in place at least going back another 10 years, and we've refined them and tweaked them at different times. All of our analysis as we went through them was to check against each and one of these to make sure that, number one, are they current? Do they still resonate within the community? And then how do they continue to move forward and allow us to move forward throughout the next 10 years of our continued evolution? This is all done is using best practices through our agency reaccreditation process. We're currently in the middle of that. That happens every 5 years. This will be the third time that we have been reaccredited as an agency. This is a national accreditation. 154 standards of excellence, which are all based on best practices from around the country. And as you see the breakdown in the numbers, we're only one of 8 counties total that have this national certification. And the number of counties who have been reaccredited through this process, you can count on one hand at this point, and we would be one of those moving forward. Our entire operation is entirely reliant on every good organization does, their people. And this is our snapshot as we stand here today. 175.42 FTEs, and when you start to carve up temporary positions, we've done a total reevaluation and a recheck on all of our GIS base mapping. So we've got the next generation, if you will, of all of the facilities in the county. While this particular map's got dots spread all over the place, we want to make sure that we've captured all of the city facilities and in all the schools as well, because those come into play in any analysis that we've done. But overall, as you've seen in the past, this is an overview generally of the types of facilities that we have within our department, everything from the number of total acres to where our staff is located. It does include now, since our last 5-year update, 2 more golf courses, the one that's in operation in Wekiva and the addition of Deer Run, in addition to the roadway medians and other county facilities, which we maintain the landscape. Overall, budget-wise, pretty much what is spent at our facility goes into the facility and the people that are there. The majority of that is done through operations and day-to-day operations, and we've got numbers that we've calculated here that we've shown you what is spent on capital at each particular facility. Most importantly, however, you'll see in the top graph that really the bulk of 71% of the funding that's done comes out of the general fund to fund these particular operations going forward. Now, since we obviously have needs, and since you never reach that ultimate aspirational goal, we need a lot of assistance, and we do have that throughout the community, whether they're business leaders and businesses who are involved in volunteer efforts or Adopt a Park programs, but from additional residents just getting involved through Memorial Bench and Street programs, all the way down to our different advisory boards and committees, of which you appoint. We've got at least 4 of those within our department alone. So we've got lots of good representation from throughout our community and a lot of good partners that we'll continue to build on as we move forward. Now, our system goes back to, I'll say, in 1969. I use this in briefings. That is the year of my birth, not to give anything away, so I'd like to say we have a fairly young system. I'll leave it at that. But we've seen, obviously, the evolution of that system since 1969. The other thing that we checked as we went forward through the other past system plans that we've done is there's a number of ways that you can categorize your different parks. And really the idea of why you do that is it starts to establish really the minimum standards that we expect each of our parks to be able to live up to, if you will, in the types of facilities that people will encounter while they're there. Excuse me for one second. That it establishes a service area, that the service areas between our parks are different depending on where they are located, so whether they're the urbanized area or they're in the rural charter boundary area. And it really starts to set the ability for us to then do a deeper dive into the analysis of how is this holding up? How are we holding up in terms of the accessibility of parks throughout the county for all of our residents moving forward? We took a look at the demographics and population updates. As I mentioned, the Seminole 2045 plan that was run last year, and prior to that, we were able to use that information. Obviously, we're not contracting in terms of our population, but item number 2 on that list, just to give you an idea in terms of context of looking at, right now, we're projected to increase by about 38,000 residents in the next 20 years. That's about the equivalent of the current population of the city of Winter Springs. So not an insignificant number of folks that we're expecting to be moving into Seminole County as we continue to grow. What that also means, however, is that while we continue to maintain and adapt the parks as we move forward, is that we need to keep those things in mind, that we're going to continue to have more and more demands placed on just the physical condition as well as the use of our existing facilities. I mentioned service area analysis, and this is a composite map, and within this report does a much deeper dive into how we look at these moving forward. But really, this is a check for us to say, if it's important for our residents to be within a certain amount of room or space from a facility, and we saw with the investments that we made at Rolling Hills, for example, the ability for a park to have a positive effect on property values, your proximity to a existing park or a well-maintained park does have an economic impact all the way down to your own pocketbook and of course, the county. So there was a deeper dive analysis that was done, and I'm going to show you what some of those results turned up. But what it also said is it allows us to take a look at, as we look at future parks projects over the next 10 years, where might some of those target areas be? That's all at this point is what that will start to tell us, and I'll show you what the results of that were in just a moment. We also do a very deep dive, and this is really where it becomes a cooperative effort between our consulting team as well as our staff into doing a check on where are we with in terms of maintenance and needs across the board at all of our existing facilities. Back in 2018, we established a set of criteria that our staff use to evaluate each of our facilities. And when I'm talking about the facilities, it's not just, okay, how's this one park doing? And we just kind of do a generic list. It's literally looking at each individual amenity that's there, looking at the age, what are the needs, what are the upcoming needs that we have, and making sure that we're documenting all of that as we move forward in terms of how we prioritize our CIP. Another item that we have not done in the past as part of our park system master planning is to take a look at what the sporting events that we have in youth sports tournaments have generated an overall economic impact at our facilities. Now, this chart you can't read, and it's for a reason. I just wanted to focus on the big numbers, if you will. The detail, however, is in the report. But it says in the last full reporting year of when this report was put together in 2022, sporting events across our venues generated $63.4 million in economic impacts to the county. That's a huge number. We've never quantified that quite like that before. Generally speaking, our tourism folks are out there spreading that news. This is good news for our residents as well. That obviously has implications to say we need to make sure that we continue to invest and reinvest in those facilities to making them economically and viably significant. But what it also says at the same time is while we've maxed out our ability to generate revenue on some of our internal programs, there is an opportunity to increase revenues through a holistic approach to a sponsorship program. That's something we've partnered with Andrea and her folks within their group, and we're looking at bringing back to you a more vibrant approach to sponsorships at our existing facilities. The last piece of our needs and opportunities assessment really came then, like as I said, most of the summer and into the fall of last year was just talking to folks out in the community. So we had individual focus group meetings, public meetings, and the good news with all of that, as well as a statistically significant survey that was then published, and we had a number of responses come back to, the analysis that came out of that, really had a number of key findings in the overview that folks are generally happy. Now we had a survey done in 2019, we had another one done in 2014. These numbers have remained fairly consistent. Folks have said, however, that they would like to see some additional new parks or opportunities, especially ones closer to where they may live. Some folks may have to travel quite a bit to get to any of our facilities going forward. As well as a stated needed program for folks of all ages with a special emphasis on youth and seniors. Now, we've heard some of that over the last 5 years. What the implications of that will be able to show you as to how we address that moving forward. But as we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years, since our last 10-year master plan was done, our philosophy has always been, generally speaking, that we did not compete with what the cities had offered, that we complement each other in the services that we provide. As the unincorporated areas have continued to see massive growth, especially over the last 5 years, what we are starting to see, however, is that the city facilities are reaching capacity, and the folks in the unincorporated areas are now starting to turn to us and saying, what about us? We do live in the county. We don't necessarily have access to these types of facilities. Is this something that you'll be looking to provide in the future? So that is a huge takeaway and a slight change in our philosophy as we look for over the next 10 years. So if you take everything that I just went through on the left side of the screen, going through a needs and priorities and opportunities exercise, then what do you do with all that? It's a pile of stuff. And really, over the last third of this project, it was how do you organize that then into actionable items to move this forward and continue to use as a guide. So using our mission, our goals, and objectives as a lens in which to sort of digest all this information, we came up with a list of master plan initiatives that are really bifurcated into two different areas. What are the impacts to our facilities and what are the implications there, so the physical places? What are the impacts to our programs and operations? So what do we do there? What are folks doing there? What are the types of programs that we offer? And then lastly, wrapping that up with a implementation approach. So as with any master plan of this nature, when you're looking at a system, there is no single silver bullet to anything. It really is a question of taking a look at patterns that you start to see and derive from the feedback that we've received through our staff and county residents, and then how do we package that together so that we can then make sense of that and put together master plan initiatives that can address multiple items at one time and make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our residents' dollar moving forward. So with that, I'm going to move directly into the overall master plan initiatives. The two groups that I described, the facilities is listed up on the left. On the right is the programs and operations. There are 10 main initiatives that we have listed. Certainly there are sub-initiatives underneath each one. I'm really only going to spend time on the top 5, which is on the left-hand side. Quite honestly, those are our most costly items, if you will. And these are the things that you'll see that have the largest impact on our operations and our CIP moving forward. So those top 5, and I'll start with, usually I almost started doing a David Letterman top 10, but that goes a long way away, and I've already dated myself, so that probably makes sense at this point. Number 1. Yeah.
The Stephen A. Smith top 5.
There you go. Okay, there we go. All right. Now I'm a little bit more current at least. So first off, this almost seems, the title of this almost seems kind of like yeah, no kidding, this is what we do. But providing access to high-quality parks for all residents, what that really means for us in terms of staff is making sure that we're reprioritizing our CIP every year that we bring back to you so that we are meeting the most pressing needs that we have within the community as we move forward. So part of this includes renovations at existing facilities. It also means taking a look at dusting off our park amenity standards, making sure that we're providing uniform offerings across the board at all of our facilities so that, again, we're meeting certain standards. Doesn't matter where you live in the community, you can expect to see a certain quality at our facilities moving forward. The second one is focusing on what we're calling our target areas. And the target areas are those areas which I described where we may not have coverage, or service areas, if you will, where folks don't have ready access to a facility within either walking distance of their home for a small neighborhood park or a larger facility that requires them to drive a mile, up to 5 miles in some locations, to get to a larger facility that has a lot more going on in it. So that is the first part. So item number 1, access to park facilities in terms of locations. What this says, however, is that we're not looking to go on a park land buying spree at the same time. So we're going to look at, and I'll show you an example of that in just a moment, about how we can adapt existing property that the county may own in a certain area to meet those requirements and how we might roll that out. The second part of that isn't just simply the ability for someone to get to our facility. It's also, once you're there, do you have access across the board? So do all of our residents, regardless of their abilities, have access to our facilities going forward. So we had an ADA transition plan, which you all had blessed going back about 2 years now. We continue to implement that every year within our CIP and continue to chart the progress towards that. So again, it's not just folks coming to our parks, it's also what are they doing within our parks, and are our amenities accessible for everyone here in the community. Now, in terms of accessibility, we've drawn some big old bubbles on the screen, and what that basically means is this. In terms of our larger community park type service areas, these are the larger regional facilities. I'll use, Red Bug Lake Park as an example. Larger place, lots of different things to do, generally type sporting activities and so forth, that we really haven't added anything new in the northwest area of the county going back all the way into the early 90s at Sylvan. That is the only facility that we have, and it is really overtaxed in terms of the more regional types of facilities that are offered in that location. So we'll talk about an opportunity that we have there. However, we've identified the need, and it can occur somewhere within that bubble. Then we've got the smaller neighborhood park areas where these are existing neighborhoods that are currently do not have a park anywhere near them. So these would be opportunities that currently have built-out residential areas that we can then start to look at, all right, do we have properties in these areas that we can then build off of to provide access to a park? And I'll clarify that in just a moment to show you how that can work. And then lastly, there are 3 other target areas in yellow that says as these areas continue to infill with new development, we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on, okay, what are those folks going to be doing? And do we need to build a park there today? Probably not. Is this something for us to look at over the next 10 years as growth continues to occur in these particular areas? The short answer would be yes. So roughly speaking, we're talking about 7 areas within the county, more at a neighborhood scale, that we would be looking at over the next 10 years through further study. And then 1 area up in the northwest quadrant where we really need to take a look at the needs of those folks up in that location. So showing you this principle in action, this is an aerial of what was called at the time and still is today Lake Dot Park. Since the 1950s, when the park was dedicated by plat, all the way up into 2008, it really served a single function. As you can see, there's not a whole lot there. It's a lake. So folks could come down and use it for whatever they might see fit to use it for. In 2009, we planted a ring of trees, and they show up as little tiny dots because they were small trees that went in. And our staff who were there at the time said, yeah, the neighborhood went, wow, you couldn't, I mean, how long is this going to take for these things to grow up? Well, we'll be able to show you as that continued to build out over the years. 2016, we put in some small seating areas with trash cans, so that now is our first opportunity to add amenities, and we did about, I think, 5 different stations around the perimeter of the lake. 2020, we've added a fishing pier, and from 2021 to 2023, both with using some ARPA funding and CDBG funds, we're then able to really build out the park to create a vision for the way it is today. And then earlier this month, we had the ribbon cutting out there. Now, the significance of this is that, number one, this was already a county facility. It had a single use, and it did not take millions and millions of dollars with a huge effort in order to redevelop this into an amenity for the public. So again, it gets away from a single-use property to a multi-use property that takes care of multiple needs within the community. Still serves as where all the stormwater is going in this neighborhood, but now it's been amenitized so that it's now creating a positive impact on the property values of the people that live around this particular facility. So we have other opportunities that we've looked at in the past. This is a enlargement of a sketch that we had circulated years ago. The inset sketch on the right, this is a area pretty close to where the Sunrail station is on State Road 46, where the bridge crosses, the railroad station crosses State Road 46. These are a pair of county-owned properties right now that serve as primarily retention pond. On how we could possibly adapt this as a small neighborhood park for all those new residents that are going to be moving into all of those apartment complexes that are cropping up within that area. The significance of the inset on the right is that's a 1-mile diameter piece, cross-section, if you will, of that area. And there are currently no parks within a mile of those locations. So it gives us the ability to really look at redeveloping or enhancing existing properties that the county already owns. Back to our master list, we're going to continue to protect natural resources. We've got the Seminole Forever program, which we have another meeting with them scheduled, our second meeting scheduled with them tomorrow, to continue to develop that program and the evaluation criteria. But as we did with in terms of accessibility, it isn't just about buying property out in the natural areas and then allowing access to happen. It's also how do we manage our existing features within our parks and our natural systems within our parks, and doing so in a more environmentally friendly way, or at least using the best current best practices. So for example, we've got a test bioswale project at Wilson's Landing Park that has been in place for several years now. the ability for us to go into some of our existing facilities, Sylvan would be one, and a couple of other places that we have, and look at doing a better job at how we manage water quality within our larger facilities and doing that internal to the parks, not just external. So we'll talk about that during the next presentation as well as a great example of what we're looking at for the concept of Deer Run. Item number 4 is continue to expand or organize sports opportunities. As I'd mentioned, we've had some really good success working with tourism and bringing in those youth sports economic impact events. However, we want to make sure that we're also looking at the needs of our residents as we go forward. These facilities are open to residents in the evenings, usually during the week, and on non-tournament weekends, which are pretty short supply because we do have a lot of tournament weekends. So what this says, however, is that we need to continue exploring the option of where our kids here within the county have the ability to play, practice, and continue to reinvest in our youth sports infrastructure throughout the county, not just for folks coming in and visitors coming in, but also for our residents. So one of those opportunities that we had brought before you last May with the briefing that the tourism folks gave you is directly next to Sylvan Lake Park is what's called the WB Equestrian Property. At that particular time, we were looking at that as maybe the possibility. We had had discussions with the property owner. We had a much more intense conceptual idea of what that would look like back in May. We got a lot of good input from everyone here on the dais as well as folks out in the community that said you probably need to dial it back a little bit. So where we have settled in, at least at this moment, of saying that instead of looking at 7 or 8 additional fields, that we would pull that back to about 4, so that when you went ahead and combined that with what we have next to Sylvan, now we've got a good number of soccer fields that we can offer back to the community as well, not as a tournament facility, 365 days a year. The other piece it allows us to do is really expand our footprint in terms of the regional park opportunities that exist at Sylvan. And again, Sylvan has been fairly landlocked for a very long time and developed out. This allows us to expand that same kind of community park feel into the adjacent property, as well as deal with some other drainage issues that we have on some of the local roads. So we can tick off a number of other needs that we have within that area and package them into a project such as this. Again, this is a proposed opportunity, and I'll get back to that at the very end of the presentation about what the next steps might be if we'd like to take a deeper dive into what this opportunity presents. The last of the main initiatives I'll talk about is indoor space. You heard a little bit about that back at the tourism work session back in May again. The TID or district initiative continues to move forward in looking at what an indoor sports facility might do for our community and how we partner through the tourism group for doing that. However, we have an extreme shortage of indoor space across the board. As I'd mentioned, we're starting to see a lot more demand being placed on the county in terms of the services that we provide the folks in the unincorporated areas, and we just don't have a lot of indoor space. So our existing structures really is a list of 3. The building we have at Sylvan Lake that's currently being used by Orlando City, the Lily H. Green Center, which is currently leased out to the Boys and Girls Club in the East Altamont area, and the Midway Community Center, which is really just a rental of the old Midway Elementary School for community events. We really don't program a lot of indoor types of programmings, and those are the kinds of things that we continue to hear back from the public as particular needs. So as we look forward to new building projects, the indoor sports facility we've got is one. The Deer Run Clubhouse is another one. We'll talk about where we're at with that. The Rosenwald project is out there. We've been looking at the idea of the Bookertown area, as well as any other evaluations of opportunities or needs that come up over the next 10 years. We'll continue to plug that in to this particular initiative. So again, you saw this sketch back in May, and this is sort of what the concept of an indoor complex would look like. Again, while it would be a tournament facility, it would also be able to house a lot of indoor types of programming as well as events for our residents. So those are our top 5. Really, the way this spills out in terms of implementation is within each book, there's a double spread for each page. And this is something we set up back in 2018, and we've continued to go with this now. sort of laying out the major milestones, each particular facility that's occurred over the last 5 to 10 years, all of the amenities that are listed at each particular facility, as well as what the needs are. Now, this is an easier one. I got to show you an old facility, a larger one at Red Bug, where they have probably the most needs in terms of any of our community facilities. And then we'll have a overall rolled up order of magnitude cost estimate based upon what those numbers might look like in 2023 dollars is when that was done. So every facility within our system has one of those. There's also a list of special projects that have come up where we don't necessarily have that data. They are not currently owned projects or currently open projects, but there are other things that we're looking at, and I'll use some of the parlance that's been used here in the past. Some of those shiny new things are also included in this book. So how does that roll out into our 10-year CIP? 10 years ago, we started developing what that would look like so that every year we would go out. This is a snapshot of what our division managers see and our staff sees. It is quite the spreadsheet. It goes facility by facility, and it goes 10 years out. And it allows for a justification of each particular project as needed, and then it allows us to plan for which fiscal year would be more appropriate to have a certain improvement done. So for an example, if we know that generally the life expectancy on a playground structure itself is somewhere between 10 to 12 years, let's say it's been 7 years since we've installed a new playground at a location, we know somewhere within the next 4 to 6 years it needs to be in our program for replacement going forward. The other piece that allows us to do, and some of these are actually pull downs within our worksheet that our staff uses, is funding sources. This is a list of funding sources that we've used just over the last 5 years alone, and how we tried to pick off each of these needs as they come up, whether they're emergency needs or they're planned needs or planned projects that go out into the CIP. We're going to continue to do that going forward. So we're not necessarily reliant on the general fund for everything that's going on, and we're going to make sure that we're continually aggressively go after grants and other partnerships throughout the community as these needs come up and as we program out the 15 years. So I'm going to give you a big roll up, which is really, really dangerous because this is a snapshot in time. It's a snapshot in time that actually was at the end of 2023 in terms of costs. But if you wanted to evaluate the system in terms of how have we been doing and what are our most immediate needs, this column sort of right now in the middle of the screen, estimated cost capital, here's the stuff that we need to replace over the next 10 years. So this is we have it needs to be replaced or it needs attention, and this is what the roll-up costs might look like. So right now it's saying about a $26+ million over the next 10 years. Well, doing the math, cutting down that over a 10-year average, that's kind of doable. So these are things that we can put into our CIP and continue to strategize every year about how we take care of those moving forward. The next column, estimated opportunities, these are some of the new stuff that we'd like to tackle. So, we've had conversations about maybe turf, putting in artificial turf at a couple of sports fields where it's currently not in there. That's where you might find these numbers. So these are things that are opportunities for us for improvements over the years. That's about another $20 million, so that if you were all in, looking at it starting from the end of 2023 looking forward, it's about a $46 million program, which again, over a 10-year period, back when we were in the 2013 master plan, that number was about double. So we've made enormous strides towards taking care of a lot of these elements throughout the last 10 years. Then down the bottom part of this slide are all the other special projects that we're either currently investigating or they're somewhere within an evaluation stage or some sort of advanced planning. So looking at, is there a way for us to handle and reconvert all of our existing old sports lighting over to LEDs, and to do so through various opportunities of financing, working with power companies and so forth. We've been approached on that. We're currently evaluating that. The build out of Rolling Hills and Deer Run, looking at whether or not we do something out at Sylvan Lake with the WB Equestrian property and on down. So a lot of other projects that we will still continue to monitor going forward and refine, and then as those become priority projects or they move to the top of the list, then that shuffles the deck again as we move into the next budget year going forward. So with all that being said, We're really only looking for two things today. Is that number one is a motion to adopt the updated park system plan, and this verbiage is exactly as we need it for our agency reaccreditation. And again, understanding, this is not set in stone. This will continue to be used as a tool, if not on a yearly basis, probably on a quarterly basis, as we do with our staff. So that's the number one piece out of this. The second one is we still have the outstanding issue of, do we continue on and do further investigation of the opportunity for the acquisition of the WB equestrian property? All we're looking at right now is some direction from the board. If this is something that you'd like us to then bring back to you at a future date for further considerations, the due diligence would be somewhat similar, but maybe slightly scaled down from when we've looked at the other golf course properties. We do a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental, take a look and deeper dive as to the condition of the facilities that are there, and bring all of that back to you so that, again, this isn't we're not asking you to buy it today, but let us evaluate it, bring it back to you, not just in terms of what capital is going to be required, but then what the impact is overall to our yearly annual budget in terms of staffing and maintenance going forward. So with that, that is a very quick overview of a year-long process, and be happy to take any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Thank you very much. And before I go to the board for some questions, I just want to make sure, and I think you've reiterated it several times, just to make sure so that maybe I build some efficiency amongst us, is that this master plan is a living document. This is not something that this is what's going to happen in the next 10 years.
That's correct.
This is the initial plan. This will continue to develop next year, the year after. Projects may come in, projects may go out, projects may be enhanced. We may make them bigger, smaller, but this gives your staff at least direction to get moving.
That's correct.
And nothing further or less.
That's correct.
Great. So I will go to the board for questions on what I'll call motion number 1 that's being requested, or any other questions related to the presentation. Commissioners? Commissioner Herr.
I have a list. Some of them are, most of them are comments, though. First of all, congratulations on being one of 8 counties and one of less than a handful of counties that are CAPRA accredited. With regard to sponsorship opportunities that I know are being investigated, I have requested in briefing, and I'm going to request on the record, that the net be cast wide, that we don't simply land on the first one that we heard from. Typically, if we are being solicited for a sponsorship, that means there's opportunity out there, and so I hate to, go all capitalist on us.
Perfect.
But I am gonna, and that means that we need to cast that net wide and not just land with the first one that solicited us, and we probably should investigate the value of it. I know you know this, but we're hearing lots of cries out, and I heard it, I think it was my first meeting after being elected, from Commissioner Constantine, that we need pickleball courts. I did notice that on page 579, number 2, it's in there.
Volleyball.
No, pickleball.
We do not need volleyball courts, let me just be clear.
He can't even play volleyball. He's up to pickleball.
Outside volleyball.
He can't play
Your
pickleball.
volleyball court, let me be clear.
can't play pickleball.
Can't play pickleball. And then I think there is a cry out there for cricket. I think we've all been getting phone calls. I have done some investigation on that, and a lot of those folks do not reside in Seminole County. So I do ask that we consider it, but we are thoughtful when doing it. With regard to Rolling Hills and the Parks Foundation, and I know I say this to you often, but there are opportunities to be courting the donors that have already given, because I hear from one of them very regularly, when is this playground coming out of the ground? And we literally are not hearing anything, so we got to make sure we're taking good care of those folks. With regard to the indoor sports facility, I just wanted to get it on the record that the comments were close in proximity to the mention of the Bookertown Community Building, and those are 2 entirely different things. We're not putting an indoor sports complex in Bookertown.
That's correct.
So it did kind of sound like that.
Gotcha.
And now Sylvan expansion, I love how you categorized at least my response to that, and you completely cleaned it up, so I appreciate that. Traffic is the significant due diligence work that has to happen. And so my suggestion would be that we analyze the traffic impact first before we start spending money on all of the other things that we spend money on. And if we think we can get to it's okay from a traffic perspective, which in my opinion would mean that we make a significant infrastructure investment because it's not okay from traffic now, then we move to the rest of it and we stage it that way. And then I'm good, and that is all of them.
Thank you, Commissioner Herr. Next, Commissioner Delory.
Thank you. I'd just like to also commend you all, not just you, Rick, but your entire staff. Job well done, not just today, but for many months and many years. You guys really show excellence, and it is proof that your excellence with the accreditation and the reaccreditation. So there's a lot to be said for that, especially for the requirements of the reaccreditation. So well done to all of you. You did talk about how sports and parks brings economic development in. There's another piece of the equation that I'd like to have a little more detail on, and is that when it comes through not just what it does to our residents, but how much money it brings in from the outside. In talking to our financial people, it could be upwards of 30%, but I just want to make sure we're capitalizing that as the story unfolds. With some of the parks that you had highlighted, I didn't see Roseland Park, I didn't see Mike Kirby Park, so I just want to make sure that those are all included. I know they're in the big detail report, but they should be in that highlighted as well. With the sports venue, we should also be talking about market share that we lose. And we do lose market share because we're not reinvesting into our parks, and we have lost significant amount of market share nationally that they're now going down to the Sarasota market.
That's correct.
And I know it's correct, but we should be looking at, is there a way to recapture that? And is it beneficial for us to recapture it? I do agree with Commissioner Herr where it talks about traffic, but it's on all our venues as well as new venues. Because I can tell you that in significant times a day, you can see the traffic backing up on Red Bug Lake Road. And, do you need an extra turn lane? Your traffic people, not you, but staff needs to be looking at that from the aspects of it. When it comes to naming rights, Commissioner Herr is absolutely correct. It should be a wide net to figure out what is the value of that. And I know that our economic development people can actually articulate what that is financially, and that should be looked at so we know exactly what we're looking at, not just staff estimating. And there should be some financial backup to that so we know exactly what the value is. But love your ideas, love the master plan. I think it shows a lot of hard work, and it actually shows the level of detail and care that not just you and your staff, but all the staff members here in Seminole County as the residents portray. So job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Constantine, do you have anything?
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things. First of all, Rick and all your staff, I mean, it's exciting to see what is not only planned, but what we have today. Many people don't realize the 40-plus parks that we have here in Seminole County, not including the conservation land was just showed the importance of that type of facility, conservation lands, with a 700% increase during the COVID period. So this goes directly to the quality of life that we want here in Seminole County. I'm not going to reiterate the naming rights or the sponsorships. We all know that that is extremely important, and we need to continue to push that. On the Sylvan Lake, I without question, Commissioner Herr is correct about the traffic, but also the drainage is extremely important there. There have been flooding there, and the constant development around there has just exacerbated the problem. And so drainage, I see this as an opportunity that we can fix some of those problems. And I'm not going to advocate today for any specific sport, although I've been accused of that this morning. But I will say that diversity in sports and the ability to be flexible when it comes to sports. There's sports that all you need to do is throw sand down, and you have a facility.
Could that be volleyball?
But the fact of the matter is, there should be, as much diversity and opportunity to change. 10 years ago, nobody knew what pickleball was. And now everybody wants pickleball, okay? And then 20 years ago, racquetball was big, and now very few people play racquetball. It's a fact, though, that all of these facilities need to have diversity. Just like when we built Boomba, it was so exciting that we not only use it for baseball, but we have, the field hockey and the lacrosse. And I think that it's just, as we build these things, not only for reflection and comfort away from the hustle and bustle, but we also have diversity in the various types of sports, and the ability to be flexible and change those sports as people's needs change. So thank you very much. You've done great. I'm ready for a motion if you want me to, but I'm just letting you know that whenever.
Mr. Gray, I think you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, just one comment, and appreciate Rick's presentation. We've been working on this for the last actually since I think I've been here. One thing I just wanted to highlight to you, to the commission, is as we talked through the budget work sessions last summer, is that we have a capital plan, the 10-year plan that, as you said, Mr. Chairman, is a living document, breathing document. We can change that, add, delete. But one of the commitments that I have made to you and that Mr. Durr and I are working on is that as stuff advances and moves forward, we're going to bring you the operating plan as well and how this will be funded. Because the cheapest thing I think we've all said is that we can build the facility. The most expensive thing is operating and maintaining it over its life. And so just by not just, so again, that's my commitment to the board that Rick and I have been working on, that we will definitely work on that operating and maintenance plan. And we have Mr. Jex from our budget office working on that with us. So you'll see a lot more of that coming up this summer as we start bringing opportunities to you. So I just wanted to make that point.
Mr. Chairman?
Great, thank you.
On that same note, it's not just the operation and maintenance, but it's also the future CIP.
Right.
So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think they covered that.
I know, but county manager did not.
I'm sorry, I thought, yeah.
It was covered in the presentation.
And, Mr. Chairman, I think one of the things that I did not hear, but I think is so important, that not only does this value the quality of life of our citizens, but, and you did mention, I think one time in the purchase of Rolling Hills, is the increase in the value of property surrounding those and within the vicinity for the citizens. So don't think that this, oh boy, we're just building a park. As we build these parks, their availability, the value of homes and property in the immediate area goes up, and in some cases, like Rolling Hills, significantly.
Commissioner Herr.
I move to adopt the updated park system master plan.
Okay, we have some public comment, and this is a work session, folks, so if you've got a public comment, come up here, let's line up. We'll call your names, we'll give you enough latitude to tell us who you are and what your position is. Dominique, if you'll call the names.
First is Daryl Carter, and then Charles Honecker.
If you two would come up, please.
I will yield my time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Anyone else?
Mr. Charles Honecker.
Mr. Honecker, your name and address for the record, please.
Charles Honecker, 220 Shady Oak Circle, Lake Mary, Florida. I'm here on behalf of Seminole Audubon Society, and we're very involved with natural lands, particularly. As Mr. Durr pointed out, that's a different aspect to recreation besides pickleball and tennis that I play. But I'm here to support the naturalization of the park in Deer Run. Had a daughter that lived in Rolling Hills, and they were happy to see what's happening there and the potential there. We envision this as being an area where the public can enjoy birding and hiking in a naturalized area, and that would lead to it being part of the Florida Birding Trail, which just brings more people into our county to enjoy those natural lands properties. So just on behalf of Audubon, take a close look at Deer Run. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, I will look for a motion on number one. I think we got a motion by Commissioner Herr, a second by Commissioner Constantine.
I just want to make sure that that motion was as it's suggested, because I think that Mr. Herr did, Mr. Durr did one as required by the agency accreditation program.
Motion to adopt the updated park system master plan as required in the agency recommendation. I don't think I needed to say that part, but I'll say
I don't think so either.
Reaccreditation program.
Second.
I'm reading it off of the.
Motion second. Further discussion. So I do have some discussion items now that we've gotten through that portion of it. I will not go twice, I promise you. A lot's already been said. Lake Dot presentation you put up, fantastic. I will tell you that I met with the citizens out there during the whole process. Mr. Pandos was involved from your office, and the excitement from that community of all ages who came to the ribbon cutting, and we had spoken to, my office had spoken to prior and while things were coming on, gave a whole new sense of pride in their community. I mean, you could just see it through the community. The homes started getting cleaned up. People started moving trash out of their yards. People had a place to go that was safe to walk in the evenings. They felt a sense of community. And so that's a great example of an asset that we already own that is cost-effective to bring assets to bear to a much older community in Seminole County. So well done, and I think those are the things we should be focusing on before we start expanding, is leverage what we own, get the best amenities we can for those areas as we continue to look for expansion. When it comes to Deer Run, Rosenwald, Bookertown, I support all those projects, always have. However, I would be remiss with my constituents in District 2 to point out we have a lot of parks, we have a lot of state parks, a lot of county-owned lands, we have natural lands, we have zip when it comes to a building for the young girls to do ballet, the young men to do gymnastics, or any other gathering place. We either have to find a school that's willing to be open for us. There's no sense of our retirees, our elderly population has a place to go. Whereas in other parts of this county, most of the districts are pretty close to cities who have city assets that do have those kind of assets. So I would just like us to rethink that. I know a lot of us in the rural boundary like to be left alone to our own devices, but we truly do have a need in the young community and the elderly population for a community-type building where they can go to. Otherwise, they have to go all the way into Oviedo or Sanford, which is a pretty good stroke for them. I would ask, and I think I heard this, but when it comes to things like upgrading to LED lighting at, for instance, Boombah, which arguably is not that old, I understand the benefit in that. For me, what I'm going to want to see is an overall, all-inclusive ROI on those type of projects. LED sounds great. Going to save us some power, fantastic. We need to look at the overall cost of removal, installation, longevity, and so forth. So that's all I've got to say. Good work. Thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Seeing none, passes unanimously. All right, I will move to item number 2.
There's a second motion.
Commissioner Herr.
I move to direct staff to initiate the due diligence process, starting with the traffic study on the WB equestrian property and return to the BCC at a future date for further consideration.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, Could I add and drainage?
I'm sorry?
Could I add the word traffic and drainage? to
Well, I think that would be, you can, but I
That's the
think
second
that's
piece.
basically what's going to happen when they go to study
As
it.
long as it's for the record. Okay, fine.
So a motion, second. Any questions for staff at this point? Nope. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, pass unanimously. Mr. Durr, you've got your direction. Mr. Gray, you've got your direction.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. What kind of timeline do you believe you need to bring this back to us on the equestrian center?
The equestrian facility will be a matter of months.
Okay, so can we set a date certain of 60 days?
You ain't doing it in 60
That might be
days.
a little too quick, but
Do you need 90?
yeah, I'd go 90.
90's good?
Yeah.
Okay. Not trying to put you in a hole, but I really am.
If we can do it faster, we will do it faster and bring it back to you earlier.
Great, so 90 days, everybody's good with that?
Maximum 90 days.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I think that concludes your presentation. Mr. Durr,
Got one more.
go ahead with your next one.
Yes. So this one, I will do part of the presentation, so you get a little bit of a break for me. But wanted to brief you on the overall master plan as it stands today and show you the next steps. But before we do that, once again, have to thank the residents around Deer Run, without which we would not be here today having this conversation, and obviously your leadership on the acquisition of the property, which, just as a reminder to both everyone here as well as the residents in that community, the due diligence process on that, along with Wakaiba, took a full year, the full year of 2021. There were 8 different times where this came back to a public meeting of some sort with some sort of action items that went along with it. So this went through a lot of analysis and a lot of discussion. Again, we acquired that all at the end of 2021. The full list is what you saw here. This was sort of the ideas at the time when we went through our due diligence on what we could see potentially out of this particular property. Highlighted in yellow are certain structures that are on the property. The community building, what we were calling was the old clubhouse, the maintenance building and yard, and that complex there, as well as a small out restroom building, which has since been removed, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then we talked with the community prior to the decision to ever acquire this, of the kinds of things that you can see there. So obviously stabilizing the property, the potential of a trail, and really hammering, and we put this on a separate category, stormwater improvements, of water being such an important part of the master plan of this property going forward. And I'm not going to say anything about that. I'll let Pete Seckler from GAI, our park designers and consultants who've been working with so many of the HOAs around here through this process, moving this forward. And during this process, we received this from a resident living right on the course. So this was the day before Hurricane Ian made its appearance in 2022. This is what it looked like, and then I tried to match up the following picture for the next day as best I can. This is the importance of water to this neighborhood. So can't see the golf course anymore because it became one gigantic retention area. So obviously water and drainage and water quality were very important from the start, and we've seen that continue to play out as we plan the project. Now, before we get into the master plan itself, just to give you and the public a general briefing on what's been going on while we've been planning this, is we've completed the required environmental remediation that was on site. It was fairly minor, especially compared to Rolling Hills. There were a lot of safety issues that were resolved, all the way down to doing an in-depth infrastructure review and structures assessment on all of the existing features there. We're currently still in the process of stabilizing the clubhouse building. It is probably one of the single largest assets on the property in terms of construction. We're moving forward with sealing up that roof. We've gone through a lot of details and pulling off panels and making sure that the structure itself and the beams that are in place are in good condition. Thankfully, the answer was yes. So unlike Rolling Hills, where we had to come back and say we really need to knock the building down, in this case, we want to seal this up and then begin to adapt it for community use going forward. In the meantime, we've also continued to mow and maintain the property as if it were a park that's already open to the public, even without specific improvements that are out there. So we continue to mow it, continue to pick up litter and manage the tree canopy that's there, as well as the various lakes and drainage areas that are there. During that time, we issued the RFP for the master plan to create a vision for the park. Now, I have the pleasure of turning this over to Pete Seckler.
Morning, Pete.
Oh, I don't want to do that.
Pete, if you'll just give us your full name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Pete Seckler, I reside at 417 Avalon Boulevard, Orlando, Florida.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Let's see, which way is which? Okay, got it. Appreciate being here today. I've got Keith Orpeza, Daphne Green's back there, a couple other members of our team that were here for the Parks Master Plan process. We have really enjoyed working on this project. I think picking up on what Rick said, water and environmental restoration really is a driver for this project. And I think one way to kind of keep this in your mind, there's a lot of things that we've talked about in the past in terms of the vision for Rolling Hills, in terms of a generally passive recreation place that has outdoor rooms, it has nicely composed views, it has opportunities for different types of experiences. All of those ideas are in play on this project. The difference is Rolling Hills is essentially at the top of a large sandhill. This is at the bottom of a drainage basin. This was the drainage area, this was the floodplain when this development was originally constructed. And so what better use than to put a golf course that, can accept all that stormwater. So here we are decades later, and, we're kind of in the same place as Rolling Hills, how to repurpose and reinvent the use of this property. So we have had some pretty significant and heavily attended public meetings at Sterling Park Elementary. They've actually been a lot of fun. People have been very, very engaged, as you can imagine. A lot of feedback. So we appreciate that. We've also been running an interactive website, and we've had over 200 surveys returned on the website. We've had a lot of traffic on the website, people looking at the project, and so forth and so on. I think that as we have developed plans, and we have done a few revisions based on some of these public meetings, we really have heard, a very strong desire to, have walking paths, bicycle paths, picnicking, playgrounds, renovate the community center, address the water issue. I think people just want a beautiful park space that can be used for kind of passive to lightly active recreation. I'm going to describe to you what we think that looks like here in a second. But what they don't want is they don't want organized ball fields. They don't want lights. They don't want, actually, it's funny you mentioned pickleball because there's a certain amount of sound that comes with pickleball. I think people are not excited about that at this location, which is fine. And I think the other thing is I think there's a sensibility about parking and how we handle parking. I think when you have a really large parking lot, that implies that a really large amount of people from really far away are coming to use the park. And I think what we want is smaller kind of dispersed parking so that we're balancing, regional kind of county-wide access to this facility with local access that are for people that are within biking distance, walking distance, jogging distance. That we're striking the right balance there. We're not trying to create, a regionally significant park here. We're trying to create a beautiful community park for this area of the county and something that's worth visiting for other members of the county. So let's talk about program for a second, and I appreciate the gentleman from the Audubon Society. I think that the offering here, the opportunity on this site, is to allow people real proximate access to some distinctly Florida, environmental language. Real Florida ecology, a real sense of being in the Florida environment, whether that's walking, biking, getting near the flora and fauna of Florida, maybe putting a kayak in the water, those kinds of opportunities. And we certainly have those. Seminole County's extremely well, this is your brand, right? But in some cases, you have to, there's a little bit of work to get to those kinds of locations. You maybe have to drive a little bit or what have you. This is something that's really literally in the backyard of a whole bunch of people that they can really experience this. Now, if you're going to have the actual Florida environmental experience. If we're going to give people a taste of that, we have to have an actually functioning Florida ecosystem. And so this means returning a piece of property that was essentially the lowland wetland drainage system that goes to Lake Howell. It ultimately goes all the way to Lake Jessup. We need to, that has been ditch swaled and altered in order to support having, dry fairways and dry greens. We need to actually restore a little bit of that natural hydrology and natural ecology if we want to be able to present this new vision. We also think that if we can construct this properly, we think this is a place to learn, it's a place to teach, and we mean that in both the informal way, in terms of community awareness and tangibility of our relationship to the natural environment, but we also mean it in kind of a literal way. We think that there can be student projects going on out here. There can be opportunities to learn about biology and ecology and water quality and those types of things, as they occur in Seminole County and in Florida in general. And then when we come down to recreation, this is not going to just, be a big empty park of, water. There's a wide array of things that we can create opportunities for. And again, back to that Rolling Hills language, we can compose the park in such a way that there are big outdoor rooms and things that are legible and places to go, things that are memorable that people understand as the places for certain types of activities. But we are going to, we're going to keep it to the kinds of things that you see here, as opposed to things that are, competitive sports and all that comes with that. So that's kind of the vision. So looking at the site today to further kind of appreciate, and I think many of you know this, but I realize I'm speaking to folks in the audience and maybe folks that may watch this on the replay, on the video replay. The current site has been drained. It's been ditch swaled, there's been retention ponds added, it's been drained out. And so what happens when you do that, you're really trying to get rid of water as quickly as possible so that you can keep the site dry and functioning as a golf course. Now, it may sound antithetical when you think about a hurricane and flooding. Why wouldn't you want those ditches? Why wouldn't you want to get rid of water as rapidly as possible? Actually, what happens is this site, the water storage capacity of this site has been reduced because land has been pulled up. It's like taking a big cup and trying to bring it all through a narrow straw. It's that capacity has been consolidated into these narrow ditches with small outfalls, things that are easily clogged and compromised and don't have overflow capability. And so not only are they not restoring the aquifer and sustaining a viable ecosystem during the general course of a year, they actually have less capacity to respond when a large event takes place. And so we want to repair that. So what that means is, in our vernacular, less pipes and more streams. Certainly if you put a pipe in the ground, you can make water go fast, right? But you can only make as much water as fits in that pipe. And if that pipe gets clogged, you're out of luck. If you have a stream, you have so much more volume to work with. And if you design the grading, the form of the land around the stream in such a way, you create even more volume so that you can handle the ebb and flow of seasonal change from winter to summer, but also those large events. The way that this works, there's some terminology that we use, and again, I'm kind of sharing this with everyone that might watch. This is a case study. This is the Greenwood Urban Wetland Park at Lake Haven, which is right in the center of downtown Orlando in the neighborhoods. This is actually a big engineering project. There is a natural lake, Lake Haven, but Lake Haven takes runoff from the 408, it takes runoff from the neighborhoods, it takes runoff from various areas of built development. Those go into man-made ponds, but the man-made ponds are heavily planted with natives. They go into streams. The streams are controlled by what we call weirs, so that when the pond fills up, it overflows into the weir, goes into the next stream, and ultimately gets to the natural lake. What happens as all of that is occurring is that water is being absorbed into the aquifer, it's being absorbed into the ecosystem, it's being cleaned and filtered in terms of water quality, and ultimately it gets where it needs to go. And it supports native ecology that is adapted to Florida's normal cycles of wet season, dry season. When you go to this type of a park, you see people doing the kinds of things that we talked about earlier. And you can see all of these things happening on any given day, you know, not just people walking, but community gardens, people doing plein air, outdoor painting, birthday parties, you know, all sorts of things, community gardens. These are all the kinds of things that we think can happen at our site. But I think the key thing that we have to sort of embrace as an ethos is that this is not a manicured, the edges at least of this water are not necessarily a manicured environment. That's not nature. Nature is not manicured. We can manicure usable spaces for some of the program elements that we want to have. We can manicure them to an edge. And then there's a place where I think it becomes part of the water system and part of this natural ecology. So when you look at these kinds of images, I think there's a lot of edges in this park, whether they're streams, lakes, what have you, that actually are going to look and feel and function like nature. And that doesn't mean that you go out there and necessarily mow, you know, you're not going to be out there mowing St. Augustine, you know, adjacent to some of these water bodies. That's not what they're for. So we have a conceptual master plan, and then you see an image in the lower right, which is also a thought about how to take advantage of Eagle Circle is really an extension of the park. We feel like if people can get to Eagle Circle and get on a trail, they're in the park. Because once they're on the trail, there's going to be doorways into the larger park complex within. To kind of walk you through, and actually, while I'm thinking about it, let me just hit one thing on this. I think I said, I showed the earlier site plan of the existing conditions. Right now, in its current form, there's about 30 acres of surface water acreage on the property. The way that we have reconfigured the lakes and the connections between the lakes, we have effectively achieved a net increase of about 8.3 acres. So that's 250 to 300%, or I'm sorry, 20 to 30% more of the current volume. Trying to do the math there. Almost a full 30% more of the current volume of the lake that you have there today. But we also think it will function a lot better. And to look at some of the kind of, you know, little moments and places, again, we want to create memorable places. We want to create memorable moments as you're going through this park. So coming in to a repurposed and renovated clubhouse into a true community center, some parking there, actually kind of recalling the golf course heritage with a chip and putt kind of course, and we've done a few of these in parks. They're a lot of fun, and they're real popular. And then a kind of a bridge into the main park. So you will go over this bridge at that note where it says Queen's Landing. There's a car bridge, and there's also a pedestrian bridge to the lower right next to the community center. That's really kind of the ceremonial entrance. Once you pass that threshold, you're really in the park. The center of the park, we think, is actually a really tremendous opportunity from the standpoint that this golf course, unlike Rolling Hills, this golf course actually has several fairways that are essentially like links. They're on top of each other. They're adjacent to each other. So not every fairway on this course has homes on both sides, which is the case at Rolling Hills. At Rolling Hills, every fairway is fronted or backed up to by homes. We've got a significant area of land here that doesn't have homes fronting on it. And we can actually consolidate that. This is multiple football fields big. We can consolidate that and really make that into the kind of area where you can have open play, whether it's, youth soccer or flying kites or, balloons or, there's all sorts of things that could go on in that site and really not have any particular impact on the neighbors. As you kind of move around, this is right across the street from Sterling Park Elementary. We have a little bit of parking here, which could also serve as a little bit of adjacent stacking for people waiting to pick up kids, maybe for after-school programs or what have you. We did have some other program here, but we revised that and put in a secondary playground here at the direction of the community and the people that were participating in the meetings. And also, we've really kind of beefed up, and as we do this, when we move to the next phase of design, hopefully, we really want to take a very close look at the real on-the-ground buffer condition between, the back of someone's house, someone's backyard, and the park, so that we're not bringing trails or things too close to someone's private property. We want some sense of perceptual edge. And so we've built up kind of those buffers around individual properties. There's a particular feature here. Now I'm kind of on the northern edge of the park, headed towards the outfall, marked Howell Channel. And what we see here is not just a lake opportunity and a sort of a lake edge kind of a context, but actually a long environmental swale that can serve as a filtering system for water before we get to the ultimate outfall. This particular genre of work is kind of a specialty of ours. We've got several projects now built that really are recreating this type of environmental system with some kind of contemporary lines that juxtapose really nicely with a very natural environmental feeling for something that's really striking and interesting to walk through and experience. And we're very excited about what that can be. And then ultimately getting back out to Eagle Circle, the right-of-way, and we think we can do a whole set of improvements around the lake. So with that, that's essentially where we are. We think we're around $14 million as a conceptual budget estimate. And we're looking forward to, proceeding with the plan. We've got a little more drawing to do, but we need to get your input before we conclude our drawings and finish the master plan.
Thank you very much. Mr. Durr?
We get to the very last slide here. So this is what we're seeking input on today. Obviously, any comments that you may have, as Pete had just mentioned, about the development of the overall conceptual master plan, because really what we'd like to do next is then turn around and come back to our stakeholders that we've been meeting with on this project and fill them in on, here's how the presentation went. Here's where we need to maybe do a little bit more of a revision or lock down certain things, but to then formally conclude the conceptual master planning process with those stakeholders. And we'd like to get back to them as early as we can, meaning that if we can make a meeting happen in March, we'd love to be able to do so. That we will continue forward, and this is on a separate track altogether with stabilizing the former clubhouse building, which I had mentioned before. And that lastly, we'd like to establish what a true phase one might look like as we move through the budget development process, so that we're bringing back to you in much greater detail, here's what the next phase of project would look like, here's how much that would cost, as well as what the county manager had said. This is the impact in terms of phase one maintenance costs and what that would look like, so that we've got a full idea on what the next phase of development of this facility would look like. I would like to mention as part of this, that this really opens us up in a lot of different ways because of the type of project that it is and its focus on water and water capacity and water quality. Our ability to then start looking at alternative funding mechanisms for this through grants or other programs that deal with water quality or environmental education, you name it, really allows us to take a deep dive into that and see exactly how we can take advantage of other existing programs that are out there to help fund this as well, so that we're not bringing this back to you. Here's the MSBU money, now we need a bunch of general fund cash. Let's bring a true funding plan back to you that has alternatives to it that then allows us to move forward once we get through budget development.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Durr. So you're looking for consensus on this matter?
That's correct.
Not necessarily a motion. So before I go to the other board, I'll go ahead and get my 2 cents out there and try to wrap this up with everybody else as quick as we can. Again, this is a living document, working with the community. This is a concept. As things move forward, it is going to change. There are going to be upgrades, downgrades, changes, and so forth. The one thing I didn't see on here, and it was lightly mentioned, I love the idea of turning this into a passive wildlife-type sanctuary, putting it back to a natural Florida setting, with the ability for the community to enjoy that asset, as well as the drainage mitigation problems we have over there, is the roadways in and around the golf course are problematic with speeds and so forth. I think we should be working with our roads people and understanding as this thing transforms and as more wildlife comes in and more of the community go in and across the streets to enjoy, we really need to be looking at some safe measures for those pedestrians to cross, maybe reduction in speed limits, maybe where some of those trails would come out to, Eagle Way, or whatever the name of it is maybe there's a walkover type scenario. There's already several drainage areas off the golf course, which are on the home side over there. So that's my 2 cents worth. I will support moving forward. We'll go right on down the line. Commissioner Herr?
I don't know what you mean by a walkover, but one that you climb up and walk over they don't typically get used in this type of setting, so maybe a raised walk across, just to save us some money. I think the thing that's not in here, when you start to talk about passive and casual recreation, I think we better start educating the neighbors on what that means and when to call the sheriff's office and when not to call the sheriff's office. And we probably should have learned that lesson on Rolling Hills. And we probably need to be coordinating with law enforcement, code enforcement, all of the people that are going to have to regulate this to the vision. And the neighbors that are going to have to get used to complete strangers being in their backyards, because that's how this is. And while it was a golf course, that's a different environment than what this will be. And so that needs to be happening at the same time that we're having all of the community input, so it's not a shock.
Can I actually, sure, a little bit more, because we didn't discuss this, but it's a point of, that just come up recently, or when I mean recently, over the last couple of months, where the Sheriff's Department has engaged us in saying, is there a space within the clubhouse where even now, once that building is sealed up, where we can have a patrol car stationed so that if there is a call out, we have someone there in the neighborhood already. Currently, they're using the parking lot. Some officers are using the parking lot to do, paperwork and so on and so forth. In this case, they've come directly to us and said, could you build us a small office somewhere within there? So as we move forward with that discussion, we do have the opportunity to convert one of, say, maybe one of the former golf offices that was kind of tucked back behind the building, in the rear of the building, to that type of a use. So we are very happy to hear that receptive idea, and we'll keep moving on that forward. So great point.
And it's not a lifelong commitment, and it is not an expectation.
That's correct.
I just want to be super clear about this.
Commissioner Delary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the citizens, not just taxing themselves for MSBU, but all their hard work. I know Mr. Durr talked about it. There's been, I don't know how many meetings out there, but a lot. I've been to most of them, not all of them. And the dedication of the steering committee that's been involved, I want to thank them all, as well as our county staff, as well as our consultants. We've also had another group of people meeting about Eagle Circle, because there's been a death on Eagle Circle about a year and a half ago, I think it was. And I know staff through John Dredge's group, and thank you, Mr. Dredge, has been doing a lot of work to try to slow down the speeders. Sometimes things do work, and sometimes it takes time to educate people. So I want to thank you, Mr. Dredge, and your staff, as well as law enforcement, for their hard work on that, and to try to put those improvements in place. Looking at the master plan, I think it's going in the right direction. I would like to, at some point, have more information on the stormwater aspect. I do support it, but I want to make sure that that lake that you showed us the photo of from the resident doesn't happen again. And I'd like to understand, I know open swales, you can flow more water, I get that, but I want to make sure how it's going to work with the stormwater park that we have right before you go into Lake Howell, because the county did spend quite a bit of money with that as water treatment, and Deer Run will affect not just their community, but the Lake Howell area, as well as Howell Creek, as well as Lake Jessup. And I want to just make sure that that's all articulated and documented. And when we did talk about the purchasing of this property, we talked about the well that was there and capping it and migrating that cup over to the county's cup. I just want to make sure that that's happening. And then how would we address the irrigation of that area? I like the idea of the birding trail, so thank you for the Audubon Society for doing that. I'd like to have some more information about that. I do know that there are certain groups of the Audubon people that do certify stuff, and I'd like to understand how that's going to work. But totally support what you're doing. I think that's a great next step, and I'm looking forward to what you're going to come up with next.
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Commissioner Constantine, we left you with 1 minute. Go ahead.
The thing that as Commissioner Delory has been going to a lot of the meetings at Deer Run, and I've been keeping it aware of what's been going on, the same thing's been happening at Rolling Hills. And the one thing that I just recognize is how much our citizens are embedded in this process, and how the participation has been so much of a positive, commenting and trying to help and showing concerns, going back and forth, but how we, the staff, has been so involved, as well as our consultants, in trying to alleviate any concerns that they have. And I see the same thing here as I do at Rolling Hills, and it's a wonderful participation, because the value of the 3 golf courses that we have been able to acquire over the last number of years, the side benefits of not just having a park, or in the Wekiva case, a golf course running, is that we're able to look at fixing some other problems within the community, like traffic, and especially in the case of Rolling Hills, but also the water resources, the drainage, in the case of Rolling Hills and the Wekiva golf course, the being in the Wekiva basin, a lot of the problems that we have in the water resources. So that's exciting, and I see many similarities between this and Rolling Hills, but I also see, varying benefits from each of them. I did want to mention or ask, in all of our talks with the Rolling Hills, I didn't see a chip and putt there, but I know that we've talked about it. I know the citizens have asked for that little thing, just to show, and I would just hope again that might be included in the Rolling Hills. But as far as this goes, great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Delory.
Just one thing I forgot to ask. I would like to have some additional information on the aspect of the BMAP and the TMDLs, on how that's going to affect our overall aspect of that, and because there's a financial aspect of that.
Absolutely. And we'll be working with our staff experts on all of that.
I just want to make sure we're clear and set the expectation, but thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Anything further on this matter? So it seems to me that staff has their direction, that we are supportive as a board for them to move forward and bring back to us next step. Good? Okay. Anything else, Mr. County Manager?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing nothing else, we will be adjourned till 1:30 this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.